Hello there, and thank you for joining me today. I'm Doris Venter of Library Arts, and you are here to join me in doing the Pirate and Mermaid monogram program. So you will each have a letter in the style of a mermaid or in the style of a pirate. And I'm going to walk you through how we can transform those letters into seaworthy, fun, beachy themed letters that'll be fun for you to do. So let's get started. I'll walk you through the supplies and we'll get started with the drawing and coloring. Okay, to get started today, I'm going to go over a few supplies you're going to want to have, whether you're doing the pirate themed letter or the mermaid theme. You're going to want to have some basic supplies. First thing you're going to want to have is just a pencil and an eraser. I would recommend having some colored pencils that you can use to color in your letters. You can also use markers. So if you have some beachy colored markers that might work well for your design, I would definitely want you to have a black marker. That's good. So color pencils or the markers would be great. And just for a fun little extra, if you have some little stones or shells that you might find at the local beach and a little bit of glue, those are the things that will really enhance your work at the end. The shells and the stones are optional, but I think they're quite nice to have. So let's get started with the drawing. I'll be right back with you in a moment. Okay. So as discussed, pencil, eraser, a few color pencils and or markers would be great. We're going to start by, since you already have the letter and a basic pirate hat, we're just going to add a few extra details. So we're going to start up here by just making a curve that echoes the curve on the top of the hat. We're going to add a little bit more of that line by echoing that again. And now we're just going to put, you know, the little skull and crossbones. Well, we're just going to add 2 bumps. And you know what I want you to do? I want you to make a V between those bumps. And then I want you to make another V here. And all we're going to do is add 2 more bumps to make a little skull and little crossbones. We're going to leave the skull out. We're just going to have the crossbones, okay? And now what you could do is take your black marker and you can go over those lines you just added onto your hat. Go over your crossbones like this, like that. And then you know what I like to do? I like to come in here and I just take a little eraser and get rid of any pencil lines that I don't want anymore. So I say, okay, don't need those. Now, to give it the real pirate and a sort of a treasure map feel, we're going to add some lines, and they're just going to be dotted lines like they're leading to a treasure. So I'm going to put my dotted lines going all the way down here until they come to another crossing bone symbol, because that would be what? That would be X marks the spot, wouldn't it? So I'm going to go ahead and trace over my dotted lines with a black, just like I did a moment ago. And I'll put another one there. Sometimes you make them and you say, my line should have gone somewhere else. So I'm just going to, go over the bones again, like this. 2 bumps and a V. Here's my V shape, and then 2 bumps, 2 bumps. And once again, I'm just going to take my eraser and get rid of any pencil lines that maybe I didn't end up using. So here, up here. Okay, so we're starting to add some interest to our K. So it's not just a K, but it's got a little treasure map thing going on. And then of course on any treasure island you might have a little piece of water, and we're going to put some waves in it to tell people this is going to be the water area. You might have a few little mountains, and we're going to make those mountains just with little V shapes, upside down V shapes that is, just again to suggest a little mountain area, maybe a few mountains down here. If you want to make a sand pit or a little castle, you could add that. I'm going to keep it relatively simple because then we're going to be adding shells later. So I'm going to go ahead and go over that also with my marker, just so I can see where the areas are going to be in my picture. So here's the water. And down here again, I have some mountains. I'm going to put those in here, here, and there. Okay, so that basically gives you an indication of how you could turn any of the letters into sort of a pirate and treasure map theme. So don't feel like you have to do it the way I did it. This is how I did it. Now, on the bottom here of my K, I want to put it as if it's kind of in the ocean floor. So I'm going to put a line down here. And I'm going to draw some skinny little seaweed growing up between my K. And maybe I'll put 2 there and 1 more here. And then, you know what I think might be fun is maybe if a little fish were swimming through here with a couple little bubbles. And you could add more fish. Maybe you want a fish peeking out over here with some bubbles. You decide. And I'm just going to go over that also with the marker, just so it's a little easier to see for when I color it in later. Little bubbles. And I'll put my fish peeking out of the seaweed over here with little bubbles. And I think now that I have a visually appealing design, I think I'm ready for color. So I'm going to put that aside so we can take a moment to focus on if you're doing the mermaid. And then we can talk about color for each one. So the mermaid is different from the pirate themed letter in that it's got this kind of tail, and each letter has an element of a tail in it. This just happens to be the B, and for the pirate, I just happened to do the K. So for this one, I wanted to keep it more like a mermaid feel, but I definitely want to add some elements that I used in the pirate design. So what I'm going to do first is I think I'm going to come down here and put that beachy bottom as if it's sitting underwater again. So there's a little pencil line for that. I'm going to also use my marker to go over that line for the sandy bottom. And I'm going to add, again, some seaweed growing, maybe even coming out of the center part. Here's some thin little seaweed growing, and there's going to be some seaweed over here. And they're just thin, wavy lines that add some visual interest. Maybe I'll put a fish coming out over here. Maybe it's a longer fish, like that. And maybe it's so long that its tail is on the other side of the B. Isn't that fun? Maybe I'll put a couple little lines in the tail, and maybe I'll put a little fin here. Okay, maybe there's an octopus coming out over here. So we're gonna put a little octopus head, and maybe there's a little tentacle, and another little tentacle happening there. And then maybe there's a little fish swimming in over here. Maybe it's a bigger fish than before in my other picture. And there, oh, let's not forget the bubbles. Bubbles. Maybe you want to make, you know, a starfish. So I'm gonna just have a little starfish hanging out over here on the bottom. And I think for now that's kind of cool. So I'm going to leave it like that for the moment. And I'm going to go back to, we're going to be adding scales to the mermaid, but I'm going to do that later. So let's go back to the pirate now. So a pirate has a dark black hat, doesn't it? So rather than use color pencil for that, I'm actually going to use my black marker, but I'm going to leave the bones white to kind of give it that characteristic pirate hat look. But I'm going to go ahead and color in the hat, and I'm also going to leave that little stripe free of color because I want to do something fun there. I'm thinking, you know, maybe a bright red or a blue would be pretty. So if he's got white bones here, maybe I'll add some color on the bones down below to really make it, you know, the X marks the spot. I'll make sure I use more color and not leave it white on the bottom so that I can have a colorful X marks the spot area in the picture. So let's get that. There's the bottom half of my hat. Now let's do the top half. And again, I'm just gonna do this top half. I'm not really gonna use a lot of marker in this picture. I'm gonna really kind of keep it to a minimum because we've already used it to outline some of the details in our picture. But you know, you think of a pirate hat and you definitely want it to usually be a classic black, but you know what? Your picture, you can decide if you want it to be a blue or a purple or a rainbow or whatever color hat you want. I'm not gonna stress that it have to be a certain color. I think I'm gonna use a little bit of red, as I said, to really make the stripe on the hat stand out. And after that, I'm going to use primarily, but with a little more marker, primarily color pencil. So there's our hat. Gives it that kind of piratey feel. Okay, now for the I really want to give it this kind of land, kind of, you know, beachy color. So I'm going to put a light yellow in to begin. And I'm going to just do that lightly over my picture. And if I need to later go back and darken those lines, I can do that easily with my marker. But I'm just going to shade in very lightly because I like to use color pencils in a way that where I can build them up and layer the colors and not, you know, just be stuck with one color. So I might start with the yellow, and then maybe I'll take and bring in a very pale brown to give it a sandy tone. So here we go with a very, very pale brown. And maybe, in fact, right near these mountains here, I actually might color it a little darker. Make those little mountains stand out a bit more on the map, like that. So I'm just going to, again, very lightly layer on the brown here. All the way up to the top. Now I don't want to color the whole thing in because I think that'll take a long time. So I think what I'll do is I'll get this one started, take a break as soon as I get this one section done, because I think I'm going to then stop and show you how to get the mermaid. Oh, my lead broke. I just grabbed a different brown. I'm going to then show you how to get the mermaid letter started. So let's get that last little bit here filled in to make it look even more beachy. A fun way to do it after you have shaded in lightly with a couple colors, go back and put some little specks that you might see naturally on the beach. Just little specks, little different colors of sand particles. So I'm going to leave that for a minute, and I'm going to turn my attention over here to the mermaid. And then we'll go back and look at the pirate again. Okay, so the mermaid, we're going to try to get a scale effect by using colors that remind me of a mermaid with the beautiful scale. So I'm picking out some pretty blues, and I'm thinking of doing kind of an ombre effect with the blues. So I'm going to see if there's any other blues I might want to use. There's some good ones there. And I have a few over here that might just do the trick too. So you don't have to. Maybe you want to stick with a more purple theme, but I'm going to stick with a blue theme. So I'm going to start at the top of my picture. This time I'm not going to add a lot of detail, but I'm going to start at the top of my mermaid with sort of a purpley blue, like this. And then what's going to happen is I'm going to work my way across the top. I'm not going to put it too heavy again because I like to layer. And then, you know, that whole ombre technique is basically you're dissolving from one color into another by layering and blending the color. And you can do that pretty well with color pencils, actually. Can work very, very well. So I'm going to darken it up just a tiny bit more up here. Go all the way across the top of the bee. Of course, I can go back there and intensify the color. Like this. Okay, so I have like the top of that done. Now I'm going to find a color that's similar, but maybe not exactly the same, because I want to see how they're going to transition from one color into another. So I think I'm going to go for this kind of pretty blue that's a little more of a medium value, not quite as intense as the darker blue. And I'm going to be able to blend that a bit more in just a moment. See how I'm starting to blend the two together a bit more? So it's less obvious that one is the first one. Trying to blend them, darken this a little bit so the transition's even a little smoother. So I'm adding some more color up here on top. And I'm going to work a lot quicker than you will. Lighten up as you want to get into that transition phase, so don't go so dark. And I'm thinking right about here again is where I'm going to start transitioning into this different kind of blue. Work my way down. Now when I'm down here, it's going to be pretty much all that blue. But again, to transition it, I'm going to layer and sort of subtly blend the two, just by going over it a little bit and making it look more of a natural transition. So there's that blue, right? And I'm going to work my way down all the way to here, like this. I want it to stay in the same blue, but then we're going to change to another blue yet again over here. Right about here, I think we're going to start changing. And this time, I want to go to a lighter blue still. So I'm going to look for a color that that I think would be great. And I'm thinking this color right here. I almost went a little lighter, but I decided to go sort of medium tone and then work my way to a lighter tone. This one seems like a more natural transition. It's like an aqua blue. So I'm going to work my aqua blue down around the curve of the mermaid's lower half, like this. Again, I'm working much faster. Feel free to stop the video so you can play catch up, so you can try to see what colors I'm blending from that purpley blue to that medium blue to the aqua blue. And now I'm going to go to a color that's called light aqua. And I'm going to use that light aqua to finish the tail. And see how pretty? It's actually more of a green blue this time, and I'm just going to use it to transition out of the aqua blue to more of a green aqua. And I'm going to use that all the way around to finish the tail. So I'm going to let you go ahead and try your hand at an ombre finish, and try your hand at a beachy tone finish. Again, just working inside the K for now, and leave that X uncolored, and then I'll come back and walk you through the next step. So you should have had an opportunity to color in the K. I actually took a few different blues here on the water because I decided I wanted to have some fun layering colors. And you can see I took sort of a purpley blue, and I went back and I just darkened up these lines to make those little wave patterns pop. I've also added some brown on the mountains, finished coloring in the sand and adding some speckles. And then down here I decided to have some fun. I made a red X. And then for the seaweed, I just combined some fun greens, some yellow greens, some blue greens, and I did sort of an ombre effect similar to what we did on the mermaid. Speaking of which, let's go back to that mermaid. Here is a really fun effect. After you color in your mermaid from that dark blue or purple or whatever to the medium to the aqua to the light aqua, you can go in like I did with a black marker and make scale patterns right on top. Now you may have to go and grab a couple black markers because the black marker going against the color pencil it won't get rid of all your ink, but it will dry it out a bit. So you may have to switch markers. I think a permanent marker works better for this than, say, a washable marker. I don't think you're going to get a very good effect with that. And then you'll notice when I did the tail, I actually turned the scales all the way around like this to get the scales to follow the tail pattern. So you can do that. And then another thing you can do is to take some color pencils and enhance the same way I was just doing a moment ago on the pirate letter. You can take some color pencils and enhance the scale shapes just by not coloring over the black, but just right above it. So that's what I'm doing right here, like this. And this. Just again, kind of give some depth to the scales, and especially on the lighter scales, if you use a pretty blue like this, it's going to make them pop a little bit more. And it feels more like the mermaid has some texture like this. See that? Isn't that pretty? So I'm going to continue that really quick. You're just echoing the shape you did before, the line pattern you did before. Just adding a little bit of echo, like that. Okay, so So you kind of get the sense. If I hold it up, you can see it even closer. Now, as for the seaweed, I showed you on the other one that it had sort of ombre effect. Let me show you how I got that effect. I used sort of a yellow green. Then I brought in like a grass green right on top of it, blending it as I went. And then I finished up with sort of a light blue aqua. So you get this kind of fun transitional effect with the color there. For the ground, what I would do is sort of like what I did with the other picture. I might start with a, you know, a soft pale tone. And then I would probably build in some browns. This is sort of a pale orangey peach. And I'm using it to fill in the bottom of the picture. I'm just using this side of the pencil here, like this. Come over here, and I'll do this side, turning my board and paper to make it a little easier. Now I could bring a little bit of brown, like I was just saying, on top of that to give it more of that sandy color. But again, not going very heavy, just lightly building one color on top of another. And I'll put this aside in a moment to show you how I did that on the pirate picture as well. Just building up colors. Always, again, you can stop the video, do your own shading, and then bring it back so you can do the next step or see what I do next. I'm just going to add a little more color down here, like that. So that is the bottom of the mermaid. You can see I decided to make it a little darker on the bottom of the pirate. I gave him the red X marks the spot, the blue, as I said, and the ombre seaweed. So let me stop it here, let you add some details to your mermaid, adding some scales, coloring in the sand, and then we'll come back and talk about the water and some extra fun details you can add to your work. Okay, we're back, and now it's time for us to think about how we're going to do the water surrounding your pirate letter and or your mermaid letter. So I'm thinking that that beautiful ombre effect that we got with the mermaid letter here, from the dark to the light, might be a fun effect to try to do with the K. So you could, again, treating this as a watery background, play with putting the darker tones up here on top. And again, I'm going to work much faster than you are, only because of time and video, and you don't want to watch me coloring in for 15 minutes. So I'm going to put a quick coat of that same dark blue I used at the top of the mermaid letter as a way to start that ombre effect that we got before. Working my way down a little past the top of the K, because I want to quickly introduce that medium tone blue, and then of course get into that really delightful aqua green blue that was so pretty. So here we go, working my way down. Now I think it's time to start introducing that medium blue. So let's go back and do that. Let's see, the medium blue I had was something like this, or it was something like this. Oh, I think this was it. So again, medium blue coming out of that darker blue, feeling kind of heavy at first, but then gradually getting lighter. And the way you make it blend is you go back and you work with the two colors on top of each other so that they blend more gradually as you're going down. So here comes this, and over here I'm going to also blend it in. Again, I'm working much faster than you will. Working up and down, using my whole wrist, turning my page. Now I'm going to go back to that blue, and again, I'm just going to transition it a little more smoothly, like this. Work on that transition a little more smoothly. Now, I think I'm going to continue this medium blue just to here. And as we get to the bottom, now I'm going to start introducing that really pretty light aqua blue that we all love because it's such a great color. There's that. Get that aqua blue over here. And now I'm going to probably go all the way down to the bottom with this color. Why? Because it's fun, it's light, it's playful, and it creates that great ombre effect. It's even a good color for the bubbles, quite frankly. And it makes the fish pop out. I'll give my pencil just a little sharpening. If you sometimes will need a little sharpener, I find especially with color pencils, hand sharpeners work better. If you have an electric sharpener, they tend to get clogged up with lead from the pencil point. So if you do a hand sharpener instead, I think you will have more success. So you get the idea what I'm doing here. Nice transition. Go back and fix the transitions just by layering so that the transition's a little more smooth, so it doesn't feel quite as abrupt. Get in here like this, and now I'm going to start doing the same transition over here, quickly at first, as I said, and then lightening up as we get to the bottom, which we're almost there now. Now bring that blue in to make that transition a little more subtle. Lightening the pressure as I pull out, maybe even putting a little bit of that blue down here, just a little bit. And that looks rather nice. I might even go back down here and just darken it a little near the edges in this water area to distinguish it a bit more from the background. You see what I'm doing? Just kind of intensifying that blue so it pops out. I'm kind of liking that. Now what I'll do on the other one, which is what we're going to do next, is I'll work on the opposite way. Instead of working from the dark end to the light end, let's start at the top and do an ombre effect. That's the opposite of what we have here, where it's light down here and dark here. Why don't we start light up on top, like this. Very light. And again, I'm using big strokes with my color pencil to get that start at the top, nice and light. But then as I work my way down, I'm going to go to the mid blue, and then to the bottom, I'll have the dark blue. You know, the funny thing about color pencils, you have to sharpen them a lot. They just go through the lead quickly. So here we go. Got a little more to go here. And big strokes to start. Keeping it very, very light inside the bee here, like this. Working my way around here. So I'm just going to keep the top quarter in this super light color. And then the mid part will go to that medium blue. And then on the bottom, where it starts getting light in the bee, we're going to make sure we bring in more of that dark blue. Go here, a little more here. Okay, now we're going to go into that mid-tone. same thing that we just did a moment ago. We're going into the mid-tone, and I think I'll have mostly mid-tone with a little bit of the darker blue at the bottom, because I don't want to overdo it. If you overdo it, it's going to make some of your details disappear. So I think it's like keep it within reason. And again, I'm going to go back and reblend the two that I'm covering here. Right now, I'm just trying to pop in the mid-tone. You say, oh, wait a minute, you're going all the way down to the bottom. I thought you weren't going to do that. Well, I'm going to go over the bottom part with the darker blue. I'm going to use that as a little bit of a transition. So I don't want to get it too dark here. And you can see my purple octopus, which I may need to brighten up after I add some dark blue. We'll have to see how that looks. But you can see how pretty this is going to look with the dark blue coming in at the very end. Here we go with the mid blue, like this. Almost there. Okay, I'm going to block in that mid blue with my color pencil or with your crayons, or whatever you have is what you should use. Never feel like you have to have what I have. That's just not right. I think it's much better. So I'm just going to put a little layer of the dark blue down here. I don't want a lot of the dark blue. I just want a little bit, because I think if you go too heavy again, it might be too much. So we're going to pop in a little bit of dark blue at the very bottom. Maybe a little bit going around inside the tail here. So we'll take that just a little higher. And again, we're going to go over that and reblend it, because that's a really easy thing to do. You just go in, you add some color that you were just using to blend the two together. And it's sort of like the dark depths of the sea, isn't it? By having that dark blue here. Here at the bottom of the ocean where it's going to be darker. So I'm going to go down here, go up here a little bit, and now I'm going to go back to that mid blue. And that mid blue needs to balance out that transition by re-overlapping it. Here, a little bit into here, and right here definitely. It was a little too drastic of a change, isn't it? So I'm going to go in there and really make sure that blue transitions nicely from the pale to the mid blue. Like that. And now you have a really fun ombre effect water, which is kind of fun. Even a little bit of that mid blue here, going up here a bit, and finally going back to the light green just to make sure that is also blending very well here and here. So there's your water for your mermaid with your brown ground. Here's your water for your pirate. And we have one more special effect. So this is where if you have shells, whoops, as I spill them on my K here, or little pebbles, and a little bit of glue, we're gonna add some fun details in the next step for both your pictures. Okay, let's get started. Okay, so we're back again, and we've colored in, did our beautiful ombre look on the water. And I told you, for the next step, you might want to have some shells, some little pebbles, and just some glue. I use tacky glue, Elmer's glue, whatever you have is fine. And what I did down here was I just took a little bit of glue, put it down near the base, and I added those rocks and shells, and even put, if you have some gems, I put a little gem in the center of my X to really make it X marks the spot. And then I did a similar treatment on the mermaid, where I have put some shells and rocks. And then you might notice as I pan away, I've added some pretty gems throughout the mermaid scales on the mermaid letter. So that's just to glam up the mermaid. Both ways are really fun. I hope you consider doing that. And if you want to give your paper a little more support, I have glued mine onto cardboard. That's going to make it sturdier. And this one too is just shirt cardboard, cereal box cardboard, anything you got. will give you some really fun monograms that have a beachy, fun theme. And with that, I want to thank you so much for joining me today for this program, the Mermaid and the pirate-themed monograms. I hope you had fun. I hope you continue working on yours. This is Doris Benter from Library Arts. Thank you for joining me. Take care.